If you follow a lot of fitness influencers or create vision boards or look through magazines or have like celebrities that you feel are like your ideal, but then at the same time, you constantly also feel like, why don't I ever look like my ideal? Like I do the work, I do the workouts, I do the diets, whatever the thing is, like why don't I ever end up looking like the after picture of a before and after transformation? If you feel like you just always look like the before and you never quite get that transformative piece or look like the fitness influencer, then this talk is going to be for you. Because today I just really want to expose some of the unfiltered truths about the industry. I've been in the industry for quite a while now and I've seen some things. So that's what we want to talk about, why your goals might be setting you up for failure, but I don't just leave you hanging. I want to talk about how to also set realistic goals. So I don't feel like you always have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I do understand that sometimes you want to create that vision board. Sometimes you want to think of what you're striving for, and maybe what you're seeing in the mirror isn't it. So you want to like look around and try to find like, what are my hashtag goals? How do we find our happy medium of setting quote unquote realistic goals, but also having something that is inspirational and aspirational? So the first thing that I want to talk about is what I call the Fitspo checklist. And basically, like, yes, we can compare ourselves to fitness influencers or fitness models, and that can be a losing game for most people. But if you follow the Fitspo checklist, and you actually consider these things whenever you're finding someone in the industry that you admire or that you wouldn't mind having a physique like, then A, you stop setting yourself up for disappointment, and B, you start going down that more realistic territory. Because I have my clients all the time say like, what would your ideal be? And they'll send me a picture of maybe either like a fitness model, or sometimes it's a celebrity, maybe it's like a Serena Williams or a Jennifer Aniston. Like it can be all different types of people when they send you a picture. So I'm not opposed to that because it helps you to get an idea. And I also present them pictures of different body fat percentages, like where do we want to land on this spectrum? Because they may not be able to grasp their mind around what body fat percentage looks like because they're just used to looking at themselves and the current body fat percentage that they have. So, the first thing that I would say when you are checking out people in the industry or in any industry and trying to figure out, like, I would really like to look like that, remember first and foremost, the biggest elephant in the room is that genetics matter. You can't change your bone structure. You can't change your height. You can't change where your body naturally stores fat. So, like, by that, I mean, if you're somebody who, like me, is 5'2" on a good day and curvy and tends to, store fat more pear-shapedly, then you're not going to be able to look at someone who's like a 5'10", 5'11" supermodel and be like, that is my ideal. Like that just wouldn't work for me because I'm not going to grow another 8 inches. So that part I would have to take into consideration when I am looking at someone. So that's something that you want to think about, is not just like your assumptions, because if that person has similar bone structure, similar height, they store their body fat in a similar way, then that's going to help you to understand, okay, what could I look like with more muscle mass or less body fat or whatever the case may be. Because honestly, if those things are different, then straight out of the gate, no amount of dieting is going to make you look like that person. No amount of muscle mass is going to make you look like that person. Even doing workouts like Pilates and all those things that make you tight and long and lean or whatever they promote, you're not going to get longer than you are. So that's something to think about if you're comparing yourself to somebody with a completely different build from you. The second thing that is a big one, but that we don't always consider, because I feel like to some extent we may think of genetics. We think of somebody that, like, okay, they kind of sort of look like me. I think I could look like that. One of the things we don't consider is their dieting history. Their dieting history may not be the same as yours. And I don't just mean like, yes, how many diets have they been on? That's important, but also how much muscle building have they done? So someone who has either never dieted and you're looking at what you want to do after having gone through 10, 20 years of dieting, there's going to be a mismatch there. So if you're following someone who just lost 100 pounds for instance, but they've done it for the first time. I would be very, very wary of following what they're doing, like pound for pound, if you have lost 25, gained 35, lost 50, gained 60. Like if you've been up and down and you've yo-yoed quite a bit, and someone, suddenly somebody in your family or whatever just says, I lost all this weight doing this thing, and that's the first time they've ever lost the weight, like put your blinders on. It's probably not the thing for you to listen to because of the fact that it's their first time. What you need to do is wait and see. Or do they gain it back? Because the natural weight registry says that if somebody gains it back within 5 years, then it wasn't really a success. Like that's not actual successful weight loss. Successful weight loss is keeping it off for 5 years. So maybe if they lost it once and kept it off for 5 years, that's great. But someone who just lost it, like following someone who's on their own yo-yo, is not a very smart thing to do. On the flip side of that, there are a lot of people that are highly admired in the industry that promote a lot of like circuits or like CrossFit or random things that they're doing now, when I know their background. They were in bodybuilding for 10 to 15 years before that. So when the person that's following them now just jumps on the bandwagon of whatever the thing is that they're doing now, whether it be something like that, CrossFit circuits or whatever the 12-week program is that they're selling, you're not going to look like them in that amount of time. So that's very important, because when you're not taking into consideration the 10 to 15 years of strategic bulking and cutting cycles that they've gone through, periods of 3, 4, 6 months or more of packing on muscle and then going through fat loss stages so that they can hit the stage and compete in bodybuilding shows and things like that and take lots of pictures and show them to you, then that's going to interrupt how much progress you're going to get from their plan. So trying to do the plan that they're doing now is not going to be conducive to what you're trying to do. So when we're talking about dieting history, you want to look at both ends of the spectrum, not following someone who's like brand new to the fitness world that, just lost 20 pounds suddenly. Follow somebody who has lost whatever, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, however, whatever amount they've lost, but they've also like kept it off or something like that. So like find someone who's in a similar boat as you. If it's your first time, then sure, follow whoever. It really doesn't matter, because most things will work when it's your first time. But it's just important to understand that somebody who hasn't wrecked their metabolism's body is going to be completely different from someone who has. So if you haven't wrecked your metabolism, you can follow somebody who hasn't. If you are dealing with repairing your metabolism, then understand your mileage may vary on that exact same thing that they're doing. So with that being said, number 1, genetics matter. Number 2, their dieting history is not yours. Number 3 would be the lifestyle factor. So that kind of goes hand in hand with that dieting history, is just pay attention to some of the, things that are obvious, but not so obvious. If they're not married and you are, there's something that you might have to take into consideration there. If they have no kids and you have 5 kids, then there's probably going to be some discrepancies in what you can do versus what they can do. And some of the things that may get in your way versus getting in their way. If they are, 22 years old and they can, meal prep and spend 3 hours a day in the gym, and you're 52 years old and you have a lot going on and you can barely even fit in the one meal, then that's something that you want to consider. Rather than looking at them and feeling bad about yourself because you can't meal prep in the way they can, understand that just because their life revolves around, eating clean and being in the gym, doesn't mean that that's going to work for your lifestyle. You can find a variation of it that works for you to improve where you are. But when you're comparing yourself, that is going to set you up for failure, because of the fact that you have way more responsibilities than them, and you're just going to feel guilty that you're not doing something that somebody with no responsibilities is doing. So the second piece is kind of what I alluded to. So like once you go through the checklist, it's very important to understand the 12-week transformation myth. And that is that it really doesn't matter where you are in your journey, but there's no 12-week program that is going to make you look like a fitness model. Period. End of story. Unless, this is the only caveat, you already look like one. If you look like a fitness model before you start the program, then course you're going to look like a fitness model after 12 weeks, but there's no 12-week transformation that does that. So that is one of the biggest myths of the industry, is especially, like I said, when it comes to fitness models, a lot of them have done years of lifting, not just these short-term challenges. Like maybe they've stacked those on. And if you look at the fine print of some of the like older programs like P90X and those things, they said like, the results, your results will vary. This person did this after repeating the program 4 times. Well, if you repeat a 12-week program 4 times, guess what? That's a year. So it's really important that, a lot of what happens in the fitness industry is, like I say, there's these decades of muscle building and fat loss phases that they undergo. Sometimes they may sit for 1 to 3 years of building muscle, because this is honestly like cheat code right now. It only takes 1 to 3 years to build all the muscle that you can build before you max out. Once you build that, if you cut down afterwards, you will look amazing. So a lot of fitness models will do this, especially if they have a really good coach that's going to make them sit in that muscle building phase for long enough. They pack on the muscle and then they cut down. They look amazing. And then if they're in a competition, at the end of a competition is a photo shoot. So you build up the muscle, then you go through the fat loss, and a lot of times these are like maybe 26 weeks or more of the fat loss side. You go through that fat loss piece, then you're competition ready, and then right after you compete, right after you get off stage, you're in photo shoot mode. You take more than enough photos that essentially last you for the rest of the year, or until you look like that again. And then you post those all year long. So a lot of the times they don't look like that all year. They don't maintain that look all year round, but you can post pictures of it all year round. So those are the things that you want to take into consideration, is that not only are you looking at the compound effect of their training over time that built that physique, but you're also looking at a moment that is frozen in time and handed to you for inspiration. Does that mean that you can't aspire to be that? No, of course you can aspire to be that, but you also want to take those things into consideration of like, am I dieting down for a specific event for a moment in time? And I'm going to capture it on camera so that everybody knows that I did it, and I know that I can get back to it if and when I want to, but if it's not always maintainable for a long term, because of the fact that usually they're very, very, very low in body fat percentage, which is why you can see all their cuts and striations and everything like that. So that's just kind of a real talk moment to put the icing on of all of this. Like, yes, you want to go through the checklist, and then you want to have more of that reality check of, if I'm purchasing this person's 12-week program, it's important for me to know that I'm not going to look like them in 12 weeks. They look like this when they were filming the videos that I'm about to do, or they look like this when I started following them. So if they are doing this 12-week transformation, like, how did they look 12 weeks ago? Okay, so that's the transformation, right? Like, you want to think about those types of things. And I notice this a lot because even within like my own, like, I create workouts and I have a workout app. And that's one of the big things is people are like, why is your training a year long? Like, is it going to take me a year to see results? I mean, maybe, but the point is that it's an ongoing thing. Like, you want it to compound. You don't want to just get into the 12 weeks thinking that that's the beginning and the end. You want to look at each phase as like, this is just stacking on to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. So you attack 4 weeks and then you move into the next phase, and you attack another 4 weeks and you move into the next phase, or whatever. If you're doing 12-week phases, you just want to keep stacking those on each other, and eventually that compound effect shows through. So just important to know that if you do go through those types of transformations and you're wondering, why don't I look like the before and the after? That's not you. That expectation is setting you up for failure. So a 12-week challenge is typically setting you up for failure, unless you go into it thinking like, okay, I may not look like a fitness model in 12 weeks, but I'm going to be 12 weeks closer to my goal. And so if I like it, then I'll repeat it another 12 weeks and repeat it another 12 weeks, or get something else that stacks on it, and just know that it's a part of a bigger picture. And then you don't feel like it was a failure. You don't feel like it was a setup for failure, because of the fact, you're not disappointed by the results, because you knew that like you're just chipping away at the bigger picture. So the important thing is understanding that fitness influencers are selling a fantasy, and that's not a bad thing. So I really want to make sure that I'm expressing that. Like, no one talks about it, that like they're selling this illusion because you want to be motivated by it. Like that's why you're following them and that's why they do it. They're putting in the hard work to inspire you so that you continue like working at it and buying the next 12 weeks and buying the next 12 weeks, buying the next 12 weeks. It's not deceitful by any means. I mean, maybe some of them, but typically it's not because as long as they keep motivating you and you keep buying the next 12 weeks, like it may take you a year, 3 years, 5 years before you start seeing like, okay, maybe some things are starting to change here. But when you're taking the bigger piece into consideration, you're thinking about their dieting history, you're thinking about their lifestyle, you're thinking about their genetics, seeing if those things match yours. And then, of course, looking at the stuff that, has been in the spotlight a little bit more recently of, there's Photoshop, there's lighting tricks, there's dehydration for photo shoots, there's surgery and, chemical enhancements and physical surgical enhancements of, whether they are taking some type of like steroid or if they're having boob jobs or tummy tucks or lipos or BBLs, like whatever the thing is, you want to think through all of those, not because they are good or bad. Because when you are trying to figure out what you want to do and how you want to get there, you want to understand the full picture so that you can either remove the things that don't sit well with your values or that don't feel okay with you, and recognizing that, okay, maybe that part might look a little bit different so that you're not just Mr. Potato Heading this, thing together, which that's one of the phrases that I interviewed with some of my friends that were fitness models for my Crushing the Diet Mentality course. And that was one of the things that she said. It's like so many people kind of Mr. Potato Head fitness influencers and fitness models and try to create what they feel is this perfect physique for them. And in some ways, yes, you can do that, but in other ways, those are the parts that you want to remember is if somebody else has had surgical enhancements or they're using supplements that you don't want or believe in, then either find someone who hasn't had those things so that it gives you a more realistic perspective, or take those pieces with a grain of salt and recognize that, okay, like I can get down to that body fat percentage, but my boobs are going to be a little bit smaller because they're the first volunteers tribute and I'm not going to get a boob job. So like those are things that like you really want to like know and think about so that when you're looking at that inspiration, you're not just feeling defeated and giving up, but you are making sure that it's applying to you. So when it comes to setting realistic goals, look for people that have similar lifestyle, look for people that have a similar age to you. Don't copy what they do. Build long-term habits that will compound the same way that theirs has compounded. And then focus more on behaviors and how you're performing than just the aesthetics and the results. So that's one of the things I really emphasize with my clients is to focus on their behaviors. That is literally our agreement before we start is I will focus on the results, you focus on the behaviors. That is my job, your job. If you're doing your job, then I can do my job. If I don't like the results, I will tell you what to change about it. But you have to be doing the behaviors first. If you're not doing the behaviors, then I can't make the tweaks that I need to make in order for the results to change. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and we're seeing the results, then everything's good. So stepping on the scale day after day after day doesn't make the scale go down. Behaviors do. So you want to make sure that you're executing those behaviors, and then sure, you can check in to see what results they're giving you, knowing that the behaviors are more important than the results because that is what is going to compound over time. So hopefully that gave you some food for thought. It really is a big difference when you look at it from that perspective, and you don't have to just toss out having inspiration altogether. I think it's a really good idea to have something that you aspire to be, but I think it's important to understand how those things fit into the bigger picture. So if you are someone who is already working a 12-week plan, then keep in mind that you might want to stack that on to other things. If you don't have a plan, you want one completely written out for you, I highly recommend checking out the Eat More to Weigh Less training app. I spell every single workout of every single week of every single month for over a year in that. So you get a full year periodization and detailed videos of like how to eat during this phase, how to adjust your goals for, the way to eat and the way to work out for that specific phase so that you're maximizing benefits of muscle growth and muscle maintenance and fat loss in the appropriate time. So if that's something that interests you, then I highly recommend checking that out. And you also get, live interaction with me. So you get some real-time feedback on, hey, why don't I look like a fitness model yet? So thank you guys for joining, and I will see you in the next one.